The Historical Society of Ottawa acknowledges that as we share these stories from our past, we are on what remains the unceded land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. This series is a collaboration between the Historical Society of Ottawa and Rogers TV. I'm Ben Weiss. I'm with the Historical Society of Ottawa, where we've been telling Ottawa's great story since 1898. If you find Ottawa history as fascinating as we do, I urge you to check out our website, our monthly speaker series, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And enjoy today's segment.
I'm Kevin Ballantyne, and I've lived in Ottawa my whole life. I became interested in history since my grandfather, or my great-great-grandfather, came to Ottawa in 1871. And I've always been interested in family history. There's photos of James Ballantyne, which I've always been interested in seeing, and just basically interested in the Ottawa East, but it expanded out to there and include of all of Ottawa. I started my YouTube channel after I would often tell friends of mine these different Ottawa stories, and I wasn't really sure if they were interested or not. But after I told one story, a friend of mine told me the story back and said how interested he was. And then I realized there was something about these stories, and I thought maybe other people might be interested. So I started the Forgotten Ottawa channel, and just basically as a pandemic project. And it sort of went out from there, and then I decided to, basically the topics I would choose for these videos was, if I hadn't heard it, it would become a video, or if I knew very little of it. And I basically chose sort of a scope, an area of the National Capital Region, although I may expand out from that, but for now it's basically Ottawa and Hull-Gatineau. So there'll be a few videos here from my YouTube channel, and hope you enjoy them. In this video, I originally knew that there were some sewer explosions in Ottawa. I didn't realize there were two within 2 years of each other. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this video, was the research. I also made it a little more dramatic because of the content, but also the comments that followed after. And there was one person that commented that they lived in Ottawa their whole life but never heard about these explosions. And I really enjoyed hearing that, because that was exactly why I started this channel, so that people could hear stories that they'd never heard of in Ottawa.
Picture this. It's a beautiful late spring day in Sandy Hill just after noon. You're in your house preparing lunch, and you go down to the cellar to grab some potatoes. Suddenly, the earth beneath you begins to move. Flames begin shooting out of one of the sewer connections. The cellar fills with flames and choking smoke. Miraculously, you escape with your life. This was the exact scenario for the Lillian Pettipies during the Ottawa sewer explosion of 1929. There have been at least 2 sewer explosions in Ottawa's history, the first occurring on May 29, 1929. They began in the Golden Triangle neighborhood at 11:50 a.m., continued on to Sandy Hill at 12:10, and reached New Edinburgh and Montreal Road around 12:15. The worst property damage occurred in Sandy Hill and New Edinburgh, where windows were blown out on many buildings, some of which were even lifted off of their foundations. One church in New Edinburgh, St. Martin's Reformed Episcopal Church, lost all its indoor contents due to the explosions. Along with property damage, it was reported that 56 manhole covers were blown into the air, some as high as 40 feet. Witnesses described the explosion as sounding like a small cannon being discharged. About 9 people were injured by flying glass, and many suffered severe burns. A Mrs. Hannah Hayton, age 73, was the only person who died from burns sustained during the explosions. Although the cause was never officially determined, it was suspected the explosions were the result of homeowners disposing of gasoline in the sewer and leaking service station tanks, or a leak from a gas main. The gas might have been ignited from a match, a car backfiring, or a spark from a trolley wheel. Another set of explosions occurred on January 28, 1931, at around 4:50 p.m. Once again, the explosions started in the Golden Triangle, continued through Sandy Hill, but stopped just east of Cummings Bridge, sparing New Edinburgh due to the city of Ottawa having installed ventilators throughout the system after the 1929 explosions. Property damage was not as severe this time, and the most significant damage occurred to the city's infrastructure. As in 1929, manhole covers at more than 40 intersections were launched into the air, some as high as 60 feet. Some of them landed on power lines, causing severe damage to the power grid. Windows were blown out in many residences, and some minor structural damage occurred as well. Days before the explosions, the city received many complaints from residents saying they'd smelled gas within their houses. However, these reports were ignored. Injuries were less severe than in 1929, and no fatalities occurred. However, many people who experienced the 1929 explosions were left in shock. One harrowing moment occurred for a 12-year-old boy who was skiing with a group of friends on Somerset Street. He was launched into the air by one of the explosions, but fortunately landed on a snowbank. The cause of the 1931 explosion again came down to seeping gasoline entering the sewer system. Initially, it was suspected that the gas was ignited by a plumber's assistant at a house on the corner of Robert and Lewis Streets. However, this was never officially determined. As for Lillian Pettipies, she was riding a bus near her Somerset home when the explosions occurred. She received medical aid for shock, but this time was not seriously injured by the explosions.
So the Standish Hall, I didn't realize that there had been a venue like this in Ottawa, where all the great jazz musicians and performers came to perform at this venue, such as Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Jimmy Dorsey, and Louis Armstrong. And one of my favorite stories of this, I mean, it was somewhat tragic because they had a fire there, although no one was seriously hurt. But Louis Armstrong had to leave the building. He was performing that night, and he had to leave the building through one of the windows in the halls and then climb down the roof to get to the safety. And he did this all in his bathrobe. And again, with this video, I really enjoyed the comments I heard for this video, because people mentioned that they had family members or people they knew that either went to these shows or actually worked at Standish Hall. So I found that really interesting.
What do Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, and Benny Goodman have in common? Besides being some of the biggest names in big band and jazz, they all performed at the renowned Standish Hall Hotel at the corner of Rue Montcalm and Alexandre Taché Boulevard in Hull, Quebec. Standish Hall began as the second residence of Ezra Butler Eddy, a successful lumber baron in the Ottawa area. After his first residence was destroyed by the Great Ottawa Hall Fire of 1900, Eddy built a magnificent mansion on the same property between 1900 and 1901. He named the building Standish Hall after the captain of the Mayflower, Miles Standish. Eddy lived in the residence until his death in 1906. His widow eventually sold the building to one of the managers of the E.B. Eddy Company at the time, George Henry Millen. Millen lived in the house until his death in 1928, after which his children sold the property to hoteliers Arthur Meyer and Joseph Simard in 1929. They added to the existing building and opened the Standish Hall Hotel in 1930. During its heyday, the Standish Hall Hotel was one of the social epicenters of the Ottawa area. The hotel hosted regular dances, weddings, and performances by local bands. It even attracted some of the most well-known performers of the day: Duke Ellington, Jimmy Dorsey, Ella Fitzgerald, Benny Goodman, Louis Armstrong, and Sarah Vaughan, to name a few, all performed at the Standish Hall Hotel. The hotel helped the city of Hull live up to its nickname, Little Chicago. The hotel was not without its troubles. The police raided the place on numerous occasions for various violations. A riot broke out on December 1st, 1941, between staff and 20 sailors and soldiers. The hotel also had several fires ignite during its history. One in 1938 caused $50,000 in damages to the older part of the hotel, and another occurred in the hotel basement in 1950. But the fire that destroyed the old part of the hotel occurred on August 5th, 1951. A drummer for one of the bands died in the fire, and several others were injured. Louis Armstrong had been performing that week and was staying at the hotel the morning of the fire. He gave an account of his ordeal. He had been staying in a second-floor room and heard someone screaming down the hall. Realizing there was a fire, he grabbed a dressing gown, escaped through a window at the end of the hall, and walked along the roof until he could reach the fire escape. The fire caused an estimated $500,000 in damages and destroyed the mansion of E.B. Eddy. After the fire, plans were made to rebuild the hotel, although with a more modern look. After the hotel fully reopened, however, it never returned to its former glory. Although it continued to host local events and bands, it never attracted the celebrities as before. The owner, J.P. Maloney, also had grievances with the federal government. In 1952, the government expropriated his property for a road realignment. However, when the plan was dropped in 1954, so was the expropriation. Maloney later filed suit against the government for over $500,000 as he had canceled renovation plans due to the expropriation. The case was brought before the Supreme Court of Canada, and the judge awarded Maloney just over $39,000. Due to appeals from Maloney and the Crown, the award was lowered to $32,001. The hotel's appeal and esteem dwindled with time, and it was eventually purchased and demolished in 1975 by Campo Corporation for $2.5 million. Today stands the Crown Plaza Hotel in the old hotel's place.
In this video, I wanted to first find out about information about the first drive-in theaters in Ottawa. It was something that just came about, and it was just a curiosity of mine. But as I continued to research, I found more and more about different cinema moments in Ottawa. And I'd always been interested in the silent films of Harold Lloyd. And so I was sort of interested in the early cinema in Ottawa, theaters as well. And that's when I discovered about the Holland brothers. And I didn't realize, and that's what Holland Avenue is named after, but they were one of the first to bring and to show a movie in Ottawa, and it might have actually been the first movie to be shown in Canada. And this one was probably the most difficult to research, although it was a lot of fun, because it spans so much years. It went from the 1890s to about today. It's the only one where I actually went to today. But yeah, it was basically looking at the history of theaters and cinema in Ottawa.
Cinema has been an extremely popular pastime in cities throughout the world for over a century, and Ottawa has been no different. Many theaters in the city have brought entertainment to its citizens throughout the years, even including some of the first moving pictures ever shown. So sit back with some popcorn, because Forgotten Ottawa is going to the movies. In the infant years of cinema technology, two brothers from Ottawa played an integral part in getting the technology to a larger audience. Andrew and George Holland, for whom Holland Avenue was named, were employees of the Edison Company. The Edison Company had developed the kinetoscope, a device which allowed a single viewer to watch a film through a peephole. The Holland brothers set up the first kinetoscope parlor in the world in New York City in 1894. They then proceeded to open a parlor in Ottawa on November 3, 1894, by placing several kinetoscopes in a store on the corner of Sparks and Elgin Streets. After the development of the Vitascope, a device which projected a moving image onto a screen, the brothers brought one back to Ottawa. As the Vitascope allowed multiple people to watch the same image, the brothers set one up at West End Park, just off what is now Holland Avenue. In front of an audience of between 600 and 800 people, the brothers showed half a dozen scenes, including Brooklyn and the breakwaters of Coney Island, which, when the huge breakers came tumbling, caused the occupants of the front benches to involuntarily move back to prevent a shower, as the Ottawa Journal described it. Not only was it the first exhibition of the device in Ottawa, it was most likely the first public viewing in Canada, as the brothers had exclusive rights to the Vitascope north of the border. Initially, movies were shown in exhibitions, often with traveling shows. In Ottawa, movies were often shown at Britannia-on-the-Bay, a seasonal amusement park at Britannia Village. By 1906, shops began to convert parts of their stores to movie parlors known as nickel theaters or Nickelodeons. These Nickelodeons would show only short films. It is difficult to determine which Nickelodeons were first to show movies in Ottawa, as they rarely advertised in the local papers. An article in the Ottawa Journal in 1915 says the Unique Theatre on Rideau Street was the first nickel theatre in Ottawa to start showing movies regularly in a store with little to no ventilation. The Monument National advertised moving pictures for the opening of their Capitalscope on October 29, 1906. The Ottawa Journal devoted an entire article to the grand opening of Bennett's Theatre on December 10, 1906, with the Governor General and party from Government House, Lady Laurier and party, His Worship the Mayor and members of the City Council, and a number of members of Parliament in attendance. However, in these early years of theatre, there was some opposition to their existence. In the 1915 article, it was described that people were very much afraid of the first picture shows. Mothers could be seen taking their children across the street as if afraid of germs. In 1910, some city councilors asked to impose a $200 license fee in hopes of shutting down the moving picture venues in the city. In 1912, churches in the glebe protested the addition of a movie theater in their community, asking the city not to grant a license to the owner. However, as more feature-length films were released, movies became a more accepted and in fact popular form of entertainment. Vaudeville theaters in Ottawa began to show more and more movies. The Family Theatre, which featured vaudeville acts, became one of the first in Ottawa to show long movies. The Français Theatre, originally opened in June 1913 to show both vaudeville shows and movies, was later converted to an all-picture theatre. The Flower Theatre was one of the first, if not the first, theatres to open in Ottawa exclusively to show movies on June 30th, 1914. The Imperial followed close behind, opening on August 24th, 1914. The Family, the Français, and the Imperial came to be known as the Three Twins. "1928 saw another major milestone of cinema in Ottawa, the first movies with synchronized sound, known originally as talkies. On Boxing Day of that year, the Regent Theatre became the first venue to show a talkie in the city. The main feature was The Street Angel, however it contained only synchronized music, no dialogue. The shorts that preceded it did contain dialogue. The first short included statesmen, diplomats, and others in Paris signing the Kellogg Treaty to outlaw war. Next came the Prince of Wales officiating the opening of a new dock at Bristol in England. Another featured an opera singer with an orchestra which sounded extraordinarily rich and true according to the Ottawa Citizen. Lastly, a comedy called The Family Picnic was shown just before the feature presentation. The first movie with sound to show on the north side of the Ottawa River was on October 12, 1929, at the Laurier Cinema Theatre in Hull. The movie was The Godless Girl, which had been banned in Ontario by the Board of Censors. After the Second World War and the expansion of the automobile, drive-in theaters were popping up all over North America. Although the Auto Sky Drive-In Theatre was first to begin construction at the corner of Baseline and Fisher, the Drive-In Theatre near Britannia was the first drive-in to open in Ottawa on July 15, 1948. The Auto Sky followed almost 2 weeks later on July 28. Over the next 26 years, 5 more drive-ins opened in the Ottawa Hall area. The Aladdin and Startop drive-ins in 1951, Queensway Drive-In in 1963, Airport Drive-In in 1970, and Cine Park Templeton in 1974. During the 70s and 80s, drive-ins became less and less popular and they slowly began to close, with the Airport Drive-In, the last one in Ottawa, closing in 1997, and Cine Park closing in 2019. It's been said the Elgin Theatre became the first multiplex theatre in the world. Nat Taylor, owner of the Elgin, added a second screen in 1947, nicknamed the Little Elgin, one of the first theatres in Canada to have twin screens. However, both screens would show the same movie at the same time. By 1957, Taylor became annoyed that the film industry would force him to stop showing one popular movie for a new release. He came up with the idea of showing the popular movie in one theater and the new release in another, thus starting the multiplex theater. With the popularity of shopping malls came mall theaters. One of the first in the Ottawa Hall area was the Vendôme Theatre at Place Cartier Shopping Centre in Hull. Later came Odeon's Saint Laurent Cinema at the Saint Laurent Shopping Centre, Westgate Cinemas at Westgate Shopping Centre, and Cineplex 6 at the Canada Town Centre, to name a few. On June 29, 1989, an OmniMax theatre, part of IMAX, opened up along with the Canadian Museum of Civilization, now the Museum of History, with a screen almost 7 stories in size. The first film shown on this massive screen debuted on July 4th and was called The First Emperor of China. The film was a joint venture between the National Film Board and China. In the late 90s, larger theaters with 12 or more screens opened across Ottawa, including South Keys, the Coliseum, Silver City, and AMC Canada, which contains 24 screens. Some of the earlier theaters still exist, with some still offering movies while others have found new lives. For instance, the Nelson Theatre, now the Bytown, and the Mayfair still show movies to this day. The Elgin on Elgin Street now contains a group of restaurants. The Imperial on Bank Street is now home to Barrymore's, a venue for concerts. The Elmdale Theatre on Wellington Street is home to the Cornerstone House of Refuge Apostolic Church. The Linden Theatre on Beechwood Avenue is now a drugstore. The Avalon on Bank Street is a home hardware and Mexican restaurant. The Empire Theatre on Bank Street is vacant except for stores on the ground floor, but is slated for redevelopment. The Cinéma de Paris in Hull is now a private residence, and the Cinéma Cartier in Hull is now a computer training school.
So this one was dealt with the 1950s, early 1950s, and it dealt with a shorts ban, or at least the city never, they heard from the people, but they never really considered it. But it was something that was in the papers and pros and cons and people against and for it. And I decided to make this my first, what I'm going to call, or what I call is Forgotten Moment. And these will be shorter videos of history that doesn't span too much time. And this was the first one I did.
In the summer of 1950, there was a significant drive in Ottawa to ban shorts in public. On June 13, 1950, 4 Roman Catholic organizations asked Mayor E.A. Bourque and the Board of Control for a bylaw forbidding the wearing of shorts in public except at beaches. A bylaw banning shorts was nothing new to the National Capital Region, as both Aylmer and Hull already had bylaws banning shorts for years. A 40-year-old West End housewife spearheaded the campaign. She argued that it was not good for her children or anybody else's children to see people walking around dressed like that. The campaign picked up speed, with more religious institutions joining the fight for Quebec, while the separate school board forbade teachers to organize without the board's permission, after a group of teachers showed support for the ban. On the other side of the debate was a coalition of Protestant churches saying they were against the ban as they saw it as a threat against the freedom of the individual. The mayor's office received 1,902 letters, mostly form letters, from people who supported the ban, while the Board of Control received 283 letters. There was also a heated exchange when the mayor met with Mrs. Bro, the 40-year-old woman who started the campaign, on June 27th. The mayor referred to the woman as very nasty. However, it was revealed by the city solicitor, Gordon Metcalf, that the Municipal Act had no provision authorizing the City Council to pass a bylaw prohibiting shorts on the street. With this, the mayor and the Board of Control would not take any action and hoped the matter would soon be forgotten. The next year, on March 28, 1951, a French-language Catholic action group raised the issue again. They warned the new mayor, Granville W. Goodwin, that the previous mayor lost votes due to his inaction. However, Goodwin once again reminded them of the city solicitor's ruling.
I hope you enjoyed all those videos, and thank you for watching them. My YouTube channel is up there, so you're free to visit anytime you want.